Hello and welcome to our podcast. And again, we today are going to be speaking to our lovely nutritional therapist, Olivier Sanchez, who is a fantastic asset to our team. You may have heard his introductory podcast already, but today we're going to go off on a different topic because we're going to be talking about sports nutrition. Because very conveniently for me, because I'm not a sports nutritionist, it's great to have someone who is, because it is a very, very specialist area, very complex area to get right, and you do have to be properly trained. So it is amazing to have Olivier, and if you haven't heard his story already, he also just happens to be a chef, and not only a chef, but a Michelin trained chef, so that's about as good as it gets. So it's really a fantastic combination of skills, huge asset to have around, and would be a delight on anyone's team to support them with their sports nutrition. But the first question really, Olivier, is how did you get into sports nutrition?
Oh, actually, thank you for having me today. And I think this is a very fantastic question because I had no idea when I was training to be a chef that I will end up in the situation where I am today with so much more experience and so much things that I can actually implement in my practice. And the thing with being a chef, it was fantastic, but working all hours of the day and having no kind of meal time and proper food to eat, because obviously when you work in a Michelin star restaurant, you do not have a budget for your staff. So literally you eat when you have time, and if you don't have time, you don't eat at all. So when you work 16, 18, 20 hours a day and you don't eat, that's a recipe for disaster. So I was still, during my school years, very interested about nutrition. And at the time, it was still something kind of possible for me to reach. So I had to wait quite a long time before I could train into nutrition. But the thing is, when I said, okay, I'm still interested in nutrition, I still want to do that, I still have to work as a chef right now. And I don't want to be in a kitchen, so what can I do? And I had the amazing opportunity to work as a private chef. And I've been doing this now for nearly 20 years. And I don't think I will ever go back to a restaurant because learning myself and learning my nutrition as well and my needs and all the rest of it, I think working in a kitchen in a restaurant is not something that my body can take anymore. But the thing is, with being a private chef, you discover the lifestyle that those A-listers and Hollywood stars live, and it's very interesting. And their diet is also very interesting because most of them thinks they know everything about nutrition and what is good for their body, when I think it could be much further than the truth. So what's happening is, like, for example, when I'm cooking a delicious meal and they know, because obviously we always discuss the menu in advance, and then the lady of the house will come to me in the kitchen very discreetly and say, oh, I'm planning to drink 2 or 3 glasses of champagne today. Can you please reduce the calories for the meal? So I will literally have to redesign the menu very quickly, or take things out so that the calories that she will use for the champagne will now have to be used in the food. And so, because in about 15 years ago, it was all about calories. Everybody was counting calories. And I was counting calories because I was asked to do so. So I knew nearly all calories in almost food. And it was just like, okay, how many calories will I eat today? I was like, okay, that much. I was like, oh, okay, fine. And then if I have champagne, which one can you remove so we can put less? So I was like, okay, let's do this and this and that. And then we'll come up with a plan. So it was a very, very funny time. And then my agent contacted me and that, oh, since you are into nutrition and you know so much about it, are you interested to work with professional athletes? Ooh, and I was like, oh, that's very interesting. And it's because I always love challenges. So I was like, okay, let's do this. Let's try and see what I can learn from this as well. And almost immediately, I realized that counting calories when you're working with athletes is actually counterproductive. You do not get the result that you want, because it seems that the athletes that are, especially the strength training athletes, kind of realize that they're reaching a plateau and they are not getting over it. So you need to, well, actually, I needed to go back to basics and really kind of say, okay, we need to focus on the macronutrients, your fuels, and not so much how much of it, like in a term of calories, but how to use them wisely to boost or improve your performance. And that seems to work very, very quickly. So for me, when I was like kind of conditioned to always look at calories, I think now for the last 10 years, I don't even look at calories anymore. I'm not interested, even in clinics, because it appears that it doesn't even get somebody who has some kind of dysfunction or imbalances in the body to be rectified with calorie counting. And I think, again, even when somebody is coming into the clinic to be kind of seen, and we are always focusing on food itself and never as calories. So for me, it was something very good to learn on the way.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that must have been a fascinating insight into that kind of lifestyle. And then to transfer that into the sport world. And again, even now, there's so much misinformation, and a lot of people are still living by that old paradigm of we need to exercise more and eat less, and we need to count calories. And also, we need to remove fat, because somehow there's the idea that fat does make you fat. But of course, we need our fats. We need fats for multiple reasons in the body. You know, there's a reason why these things are available in nature. And basically, if we move away from nature, we're going to run into trouble. And I think what's wonderful in nutritional therapy is we very much concentrate on the qualitative aspects of food, not the quantitative aspects of food. So not counting calories and other things. And as long as the quality is right, that's the key to anyone, whether we're talking about general health or autoimmune disease or somebody coming to us for sports nutrition. It's the same qualitative aspects that we're focused on, and that's what we need to optimize health. So obviously, you know, you got into the sports nutrition and then you trained in that. Why would anyone need to consult with a sports nutritionist? What sort of people would come along?
So that's very interesting as well, because there are actually so many kind of huge difference between the types of training, but also the type of person. So for example, if we really look at the branching of the sport itself, we have the endurance training on one side and we have the strength training on the other side. And in a bit of the middle, you have all those team sports. So now if we really look again at the endurance sports, then you have the extreme endurance sport, like the Tour de France, for example, where a cyclist must like cycle 400 kilometers in one day. So their requirements are extreme. And I think their calorie requirement is somewhere around 12,000 calories, when our calories in a day should go around about 2,000, 2,500, something like this on the normal people. So that's a huge, huge difference. And the thing is, to supply that energy, you always have to have electrolytes, and you also have to have quick energy release drinks. So that's why you will always see those cyclists drinking something, because they need to top up every time. And again, with a marathon runner, you always have those drinks that you can pick up from stands, because you know that you need to have continuous supply of energy. And then you have the other side of the endurance training, and that will be the swimmers, the tennis players. So already the requirements are not the same, because the length of time that they are required to provide energy for their body to run is not the same. For example, a swimmer can swim 50 meters or 100 meters. So that lasts just a few seconds to a few minutes, when the cyclist will be the whole day, for example, with continuous demand on the body. And then in the middle, you have the team sport, where you have the football, the basketballs, and not the rest of it, where you need to have a supply of energy for a very limited time, which is usually 1 hour and a half. And then the other side, you have the strength training. And again, a lot of variation there, because you have the bodybuilders who have a very, very specific diet and very specific recommendations to follow and things to do, especially before competition. And those usually include dehydration and no fat, absolutely, because they want their muscle to be showing. So they need to be as designed as possible. So they need to be as dry, so their muscles are really showing as best as possible. And then you have the strength training, actually, you know, do those bursts of 10 seconds where they lift up to 200 or 300 kilos. So now what they need is to have a quick release of energy that lasts just a few seconds, and then they're done. And all of these things, nothing compare. So the reason why you need to have a sport nutritionist by your side is that you need to have that diet and that lifestyle recommendation adapted to you specifically, because what applies for any of those sports will maybe not apply for you. And the other things that I have not mentioned, because they not really belong to the sport field, is the people who go to the gym every day. Who say that they're exercising a lot. So the thing is, like for me, I do have a lot, especially women who wants to actually go back to maybe in a way to losing weight, but also because they think that they're getting older and they really want to keep their body in shape so that they have less chance, for example, with osteoporosis later in life. So they really want to focus on maintaining their body to a higher level than normal people. However, and I keep telling them that if you are only exercising 30 minutes to 1 hour every day, this is not sufficient to have any kind of different approach to your regular lifestyle. What you need to do is to focus on your diet, make sure that you supply enough energy to match the output, but you don't need anything else, to be honest. Yes, you need to be hydrated, but there is no need to have any kind of ergonomic product like those protein powder or any of those creatinine or stuff like this to actually make your body handle the exercise better and really pack on the muscles, because that's not what you want to do, and that's not the aim. And also, sport nutrition only applies to sports people who train for more than 1 hour and a half per day. So anything over 2 hours is actually considered sport. So anything before, it's just maintenance. So that's why the requirement from the body are not the same. If you train half an hour, like going to the gym and lifting some weight and doing some cardio, it's not the same as if you're going to run a marathon, and that's logical already. But the thing is, it's all about as well the kind of regularity, how often you go to the gym and are you sticking to it? Because the thing is as well, what I tend to find a lot with people who want to exercise more to increase their regime, what I find out is that most of the time they are the highly stressed people who want to be even more stressed. So that, because the thing is, one thing that I really connected the dots in practice is that the people who come to see me and have a strong constitution are the one who tend to push themselves harder. And the reason being is that because people with a strong constitution understand that they can push their body, and therefore they will do so, because for them to be tired and sleep in the evening, they need to have exhausted all their resources. So that makes sense to some extent to me. However, if the stress response is not kind of looked after and the triggers not really identified and the kind of stress management is not done properly, that may lead to further problem down the line. So that's why even people who want to increase their exercise regime will benefit to have a sport nutritionist by the side, so that they can really have everything at hand. But the thing is, yes, they have the support, but they have that kind of direct approach where anything that is happening in their life can be monitored very closely, and anything that is not kind of working or is impeding on their performance can be worked on immediately. Because the thing, if you do it alone, then it might not work as well or as fast as you want, and you might not reach the goals that you have set yourself. And then because you're already the stress type, it actually stresses you out, and you may actually feel like, oh, maybe now is no point that I'm exercising because I don't see any results. But the thing is, maybe what you are doing is not working for you. What you are doing is that you're following the main guidelines, thinking that what the internet has told you is what you should know. But the thing is, again, it doesn't apply to you. And that, again, if we go back to the proper sport nutrition, when I work with athletes for the first time, what I want to know about them is everything, because there are 3 factors that can affect their performance. And number 1 is genetics. Even though there is nothing much you can do about genetics, you still need to know where the basics are. where, where your body stands. And then the training, what kind of sport are you doing? And then the nutrition. I want to know everything that you have been doing so far and how it has worked. Because for me, what I want to know is that, yes, I can give nutrition recommendation, but it has to be adapted to your body. It has to be adapted to what your body itself needs at every single level, the cellular level, the organ level, the system level, because we need to support, yes, the gut, we need to support the muscle, we need to help the body heal and repair. And then we need to support the mental. So we need to support the central nervous system, the brain, so that everything is kind of looked after and everything works together and not one against the other. Because we know, for example, that when you are a sport person, when you train 6 or 8 hours a day, which is for us, our office hours, full-time job, there is exercising full-time every day, 6 to 8 hours, maybe with 1 or 2 days rest to allow for the body to recuperate. And what's happening is that when you are looking at that level of exercise, this is extremely stressful for the body because the demand is astronomical. So we know that we need to look after the gut. We need to make sure that the stress response doesn't damage the gut, because we know that if your gut is kind of leading into imbalances, that will lead to inflammation, that can lead to hyperpermeability of the gut lining, but that can also kind of lead to liver inflammation or brain inflammation via the production of pro-inflammatory marker by the bad kind of bacteria. And this has been proven by research many, many times over. And so we know that we really need to make sure that those opportunistic and bad bacteria that will take advantage of that stress response to actually multiply and take the good bacteria away, which also will lead to having the intestinal tract reaching a more alkaline level, which means that it also becomes a lot more oxygenated. And when that happens, we know that fermentation is a big problem. So you will have gas formation, you will have kind of discomfort. So imagine being a sport person and being full of gas. I'm not sure, but I don't think you can concentrate too much when that's happened. Especially if you're a runner or if you're a team player, that will be kind of very concerning indeed. So that's the effect of the stress on the gut. But we know that via the vagus nerve, the gut play huge on the brain and the mental and the emotional via the release of all those kind of markers, especially serotonin, because we know that 75% of the serotonin produced in the body is produced by the gut. Yes, indeed, that serotonin cannot cross the blood barrier. However, it's signaling to the brain, oh, everything's fine down there. Nothing to worry about up there. So what's happening is that then the brain is like, oh, there is nothing to be concerned about. I can carry on my life. But if the gut is saying, oh, we don't have enough serotonin, we're kind of moody up there, then the brain is like, oh, then maybe I will need to be moody, because obviously if you're not right down there, why should I have a party up there? And that's what's happening. And then what's happening now, your performance will be affected because of the gut, because of the stress response, because of the extra exercise that you're doing during your day. So for me, everything needs to be taken in consideration. And that's why somebody who wants to take their sport seriously needs to have a sport nutritionist by their side. A personal teacher is not enough.
Yeah, absolutely. So interesting what you've said, because although I don't work as a sports nutritionist, as a nutritional therapist over the years, I have had people who are serious athletes, not professionals, but just people who do it very, very seriously. And they all come with tummy troubles, IBS, reflux, IBS especially, and diarrhea is a big one. And also they become low on nutrients for that. They become low in those B vitamins, which of course are your energy giving nutrients. And that's where they become compromised. And the beauty of our work is that, for you're not just coming to this with a sports nutritionist hat on, you're coming to this from a naturopathic nutrition, functional medicine model, root cause approach, which means that you're in that wonderful privileged position to oversee from above every aspect of someone's health. So it's not just about optimizing their performance in inverted commas, it's also about optimizing, ultimately it's about optimizing health and being aware of those individual needs and the type of sport that they're doing and the demands there, whether it's endurance or whatever, as you say. But also took me back to, you know, when I started as a nutritionist, I was working at the Nutri Centre, and they had a lot of sports products, and people would come in and buy those things, and obviously they're obsessed with their protein powders and such like. And I would say, well, what is your sport? What are you needing it for? And actually they didn't need it, but it was very, very difficult to say to people that they actually probably didn't need it and they were fine with a boiled egg, for example, because if they've got it into their head or they've read it somewhere on the internet, they've Googled something, oh no, they've got to have it. And, you know, it's, you know, as you were saying before, people doing more than an hour and a half, if they're doing, you know, real sort of more professional sport, that's when you're into much more tailored sports nutrition, looking at the macronutrients and the micronutrients. It's looking at the whole thing with that individual. But, you know, again, in terms of the type of people who could come to yourself, then, you know, it's not just the serious athletes, it's also people who maybe are only doing an hour a day, an hour and a half a day, because, you know, from their point of view, obviously, you know, most people get into sport for pleasure, for enjoyment, but also for fitness. And, you know, they might want to optimize their performance at whatever level they happen to be at. And that's fine to come along and book for nutritional therapy, sports nutrition. And then, you know, you would just tailor that support appropriately. But I'm sort of getting a flashback now to a lady years ago that came who was a runner, very keen runner, and she had a problem with IBS. But, you know, she really didn't want, you know, you could go so far with dietary change and probiotics and all the rest of it, and dealing with that leaky gut, which is, you know, an issue for people who are serious athletes. But they then do have to pull back a bit sometimes in order to reduce the symptoms and then maybe develop it back up. But I do remember she was never keen to pull back. You know, she was really keen. And I think that's an ongoing challenge with working with sports people, that sometimes a less is more approach is better just for a short while, whether that's for healing the gut or whether it's repairing tissues or muscle damage or whatever. You know, they're always quite hard. I don't know if you found that in your work, but they're quite challenging people. It's challenging for them to get their head around just reducing, even if it's for a fortnight or a month or, you know, a short period, and then slowly building back up again. But I found that a real challenge.
I agree. This I've seen actually twice, where, for example, I think I will use this person again because that is a fantastic case study. That person was a very busy CEO. I think he was running 2 different companies every day. So he was going from one place to the other, trying to do all of his job. And then I came on board to actually also cook for him and make sure that he had everything ready for when he was going to exercise later in the day. So now the issue that was there is that because he had such a strong constitution and he was so kind of motivated to actually push himself even further all the time, he was actually never resting. I actually realized that he would never stop. And then he would come down with a lot of flus and colds, like at least twice a month. And I was just like, you know, just take it down a little bit because you're not well. And I can see you have temperature today. Just, you know, slow down. No, he would still go to the gym because he believed that if he didn't go to the gym, then he will lose all that he has done so far. And that is very important for me, because then that's why I use my mental health training to really kind of understand their motivations. Because when I actually pinpoint what are their drivers, then we can really look at it from a different perspective and say, okay, so what happened before in your life is kind of driving you to be that person who keep pushing and keep pushing, which is fine because you can handle it. But the problem is one day you will push too far, and then that's when you break. And that's indeed with people with strong constitution. They know they can push themselves, so they will always push themselves to breaking points. So that's the people that we see in clinic with burnout, with adrenal insufficiencies, or even adrenal fatigue, where they actually can't cope anymore. And then when you really have those people who are so stressed, but they can't actually get out of bed because they are so exhausted and their resources have been exhausted inside their body. And the adrenal cannot supply those stress hormones that are necessary to actually get you out of bed. Then they're kind of saying, oh, now I need to slow down. But the problem is, it's always temporary. You know, after 3 months, 6 months, they're back on the saddle and here we go again. And they will go for maybe 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and then they start again. So it's a kind of eyes and ears. So that's why for me, it's really important to keep monitoring my clients so that whenever I see anything that is not quite right, then I can adjust it. And usually I always do that with giving them a lot of kind of emotional and mental support via the kind of relaxation, exercising, mindfulness, and everything in between to make sure that they really address their stress response so that it doesn't have so much of an effect on their body.
Absolutely right. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking of another young man who came about 3 years ago, who again was just overdoing it, but there wasn't that willingness, and he actually came for other health reasons, but actually those other health reasons were being driven by that excessive sport. You know, it was I can't remember how much running he was doing, but he was running at lunchtime, running in the evening. It was just too much. And eventually he accepted, without going into his story in detail, but he accepted because he went on holiday and didn't do that. And some of the little problems he'd had had mysteriously gone away on holiday. So we were then able to negotiate from that experience and think, well, you know, maybe, okay, then maybe there's something in what you're saying. And he was much more willing then to pull back a bit, but it is an ongoing challenge. So yes, and I guess that, you know, a lot of people who would come to us would be typically the gut health, mental health, and adrenal health, hugely adrenal health, and then reproductive health, because of course once you're into the realms of adrenal health, you're into reproductive problems, erectile dysfunction, libido problems, all of these things in the guise, because those are the types of people who I have seen, and they have been the reasons. And of course then they panic and think that there are other reasons, but actually it all boils down to lifestyle choice and understanding what it means to overdo something. So again, thinking back to my life in NutriCenter, one of the things that people obsessed over, and this is another reason for going to a professional like yourself, is that people think they have got to take bucket loads of supplements, and they read stuff in sports magazines or online, or their friends are taking things. And, you know, and the guys especially, I mean, so many men would come in and buy, oh gosh, hundreds of pounds worth of stuff. And I would think, what on earth? You know, and it just wasn't warranted 90% of the time. And, but again, they wouldn't be talked down. So it is a very, very busy marketplace. I mean, we deliberately as a business didn't get into sports nutrition because it's not my thing. I'm not a professional in that, but also because many of the products I was aware were not clean, anything but. They had all sorts of stuff in them. And if you're, you know, most people getting into sport are wanting, you'd think, to optimize health generally. But if you're taking this stuff, in inverted commas, it's certainly not optimizing health, because there's all kinds of hidden nasties in that. But the industry itself has so much hype, so much advertising, and people aspire, you know, it's all about aspirational marketing. They want to look like the person in the image. And it really sucks in, especially young guys, I found in that job, who want to take all these, you know, they're into their branch chain amino acids and everything else, and it's just all OTT. So what's your experience of that? What do you have to say about all of that? I'm sure quite a lot.
Yeah, that was good. I have a lot to say, yes. Oh my goodness.
You might be here for several hours on that one.
Because for me, it actually starts with research, because obviously now sport nutrition has grown tremendously in recent years. And we know that more and more money is now invested in understanding sport nutrition and, you know, support the performance of athletes, especially the elite athletes, the one who take part in the world championships and the Olympics and all the rest of it. So they really need to understand their body and understand how much they can push their body, so that, you know, when they have all their teams working for them, then they know exactly what to do for them. So research is very extensive. But the problem is, yes, research is great. However, Now you have all those manufacturing companies saying, oh, research say this, you know, so now we are selling you this, take it, and you will get the same result as this person that you see on TV competing in the championship world. So you're like, okay, fine. But the problem is that while those many companies are advertising or marketing a huge array of wonder foods, you know, or supplements to help you achieve your goal, the problem is that those same manufacturers are also probably selling you those ultra-processed food products that you find in supermarket aisles. And then they will put a huge, bold claim on the top saying, oh, this is to maximize your performance or what have you, you know, support your body, while at the same time selling you just utter junk, nothing else. And there is a kind of a quote that I really like from Shad Kersig, which is an associate professor at the School of Health Science in Lindenwood University in St. Charles in the US. And he said, most supplements that have been marketed to improve health or exercise performance are based on theoretical application derived from basic science or clinical research studies. Now, again, it will depend what has been done, if it was biased in any way or who paid for the research or anything in between. But the thing is that based on the preliminary studies that were done, a dietary approach or supplement is often marketed to people proclaiming the benefits observed in this study's research. But now, while the theory may appear relevant, critical analysis of this process often reveal flaws in the scientific logic, or that the claim made does not quite match up with the cited literature, which means that, for example, we know that vitamin D is great for your immune system. So in the field of sport and nutrition exercise, they will say, oh, we have added B vitamin to support your body, something like this, which is true. We know that we need B vitamins to support nearly every kind of processes and pathways in the body. However, their B vitamins is probably synthetic and therefore may not be used by the body because the body cannot recognize those kind of chemicals that have been man-made. They are made in a laboratory. They're not made from nature. So the body can actually differentiate from all those synthetic products, and most of them it cannot actually assimilate, and therefore will not have any kind of positive result or benefit on your body at all. So that's why for me, when it comes to all those kind of supplements, I always want to know why. Especially for the people that are exercising less than an hour a day, for example. Because again, if we go back to my case study earlier with the busy CEO, he understood that packing up on protein is actually essential to his performance. But the problem is that he was eating between 5 and 7 eggs a day, and he was taking his protein powder before and after exercise. So for me, I'm like, but, you know, I don't quite understand. So I didn't say anything, and I was really trying to understand everything during the consultation, especially the initial one. And what was really transpiring is that it was, first of all, come to see me to kind of identify the causes of the bloating, the gut discomfort, his low mood, and his low motivation to exercise, even though he was pushing himself to exercise. So for me, I was like, but do you understand that you are overloading on the protein? And now what's happening is that it's actually very difficult for the body to digest those protein. But the problem is most of the protein powder that you find on the market are branched chain amino acids, and they are really kind of a problem in itself because they only contain valine, leucine, and isoleucine. And we know that the body needs 7 or 9 essential amino acids and some potentially essential amino acid when the body needs to produce those amino acids from other. So the problem is that if you rely on only 3 essential amino acids, then you're already missing out on the others. So that already creates an imbalance in the body. So if you already look at this, this is already a problem. But the problem as well is that those powders are either made of dairy products, so milk, or they're made of peas, or they're made of rice, or they're made of any kind of other things like soy. And we know that protein, usually, depending on the source, is already irritating for the body. So we know that dairy products are extremely irritating to a majority of our clients, and we see this in clinic nearly every day. And we have, again, now if we look at the peas and we look at the rice, this, especially because they're taking so much of it, this can actually become very irritating to the body. Mm-hmm. But we also know that it's very difficult for the body to kind of break down and digest protein. So now if you're flooding your body with protein, then there will be kind of a delay to assimilate all that you are consuming because it's too much already. But what's happening is that the body will not be picking up the pace fast enough. And now what's happening is that those proteins start putrefying in your gut. And what's happening is now they will produce a lot of gas, and that will lead to the discomfort. But that also will change the pH of the gut. Therefore, you will have all those opportunistic bacteria that are also gas producing, who will use that fermentation to actually add to the fermentation. So some athletes and some people who tend to exercise a lot more and take those proteins will actually suffer. And they will say, okay, I need help because I don't understand what's happening. And they do not connect the dot. They don't understand that it's from the protein.
Yeah, that's right.
But exactly. And the other issue now with the protein is that if you take too much of it, then this is energy that the body is not using. Especially if we are looking at the macronutrient itself. We know that the body needs protein, it needs carbohydrates, and it needs fats as source of fuel. Now, if you concentrate on only one type of fuel, which is protein, the body will not need to use all those protein that you have ingested. And now what's happening is that those protein will now become energy that is in use, and then therefore the body will break it down to sugar, and now you have too much sugar that the body is still not using, and therefore will pack up on fat. And now if you add up that extra energy being saved and stored as fat, and now you look at the fact that you are probably stressed as well, now this becomes a major issue because you start to realize that you're putting on weight, especially around the middle. And when you're an athlete or you start to exercise, that's not what you want, because you will say, why am I doing wrong? Why am I putting on weight? I'm exercising, and then people will think that they need to exercise more, and then they stress their body more, and then they put more on weight, and they don't get the result that they want. But on the other hand, I see this with women who are kind of on a skinny side, and they have the same issue, but they don't have that kind of extra weight accumulation around the middle because they're restricting the calories. So if they're restricting the calories and focus on those protein powders, for example, that extra calories will not kind of being shifted around the middle because they don't have enough energy. So yes, the body will kind of take all the energy it can take from the food that you eat or those powders that you eat. However, you will not get the same result because of the inflammation that is occurring in the gut. So yes, you will not have the extra bits around the middle building up, but the inflammation in the body is real. And then when you're on the skinny side, for example, or you are very defined, then you will not think of it first. And that for me, I will have to go back to basic and say, oh, the reason why you have so much problem and it's not showing is still the stress response, and it's still that you are taking too much protein.
That's right. And sometimes that can show itself in ways that people don't expect, because they tend to expect it would be a gut issue. Oh, but my gut's fine. But they're not sleeping, they're suffering from anxiety, they're having joint pain, the eczema's come back. There's lots of different ways, but weight gain is such a sign of inflammatory response. And when you eat foods you're intolerant to, and you've developed that leaky gut, as we were saying before, and food sensitivities, and then you take a whey protein or a soy protein that you're intolerant to, and then you get fluid retention. And that can cause all sorts of problems, and it does often show that one in the joints, and headaches and fatigue is a huge one with that. But I remember again thinking back to another lady who came about 4 or 5 years ago, and she had put on a lot of weight. She was going to the gym. She went for weight loss, actually. She was going to the gym. The personal trainer put her onto a drink that was a whey-based drink, And of course, she gained even more weight. She gained another stone. And what was sad about that story is that her GP, who told her to go to the gym, didn't believe that she was actually going and that she was on any kind of diet because she'd gained weight. He thought that she was just having a laugh and joking. And it was really, really heartbreaking because she was making a huge effort. She really was going, and she had tried to change her diet. But what was going against her was she was eating all this dairy-based stuff that she was intolerant to. And so she gained a load of weight and then a load of symptoms on top from that inflammation, as you say. So that happens, and it's sad, but it's also very demotivating because somebody like that, what's heartbreaking is then they just give up. Think, well, there's nowhere for me to go. I'm just destined to always be overweight and to always have inflammation, to always be unwell. And it's just too bad. Obviously, she came to see me, and then I explained and put it into context what had happened to her. So it was different. But then I think about all the other ladies out there who don't know about that. One young man who came to us 5 years ago, he was 8 stone overweight. And he was just starting uni. And again, he had tried, but he didn't know about food intolerances. He didn't know about nutrient deficiencies and gut health. And he didn't know about blood sugar regulation. So he wanted to go to the gym. He wanted to be able to do these things. And he actually did brilliantly. I mean, as soon as he started changing his diet and we started working on gut health, which is central to all aspects of performance and so on, because we absorb our nutrients, and if we're not, we have low energy. So there's so many reasons. But he had huge blood sugar imbalance. And of course, being overweight and being a young man is very stressful. It's very distressing. But he did fantastically. I mean, he has now lost 8 stone. And he did that in maybe 2 to 3 years. And he goes to the gym all the time. He's a regular at the gym. And he's doing really, really well now and got his life back. But you know, it's another example of all the stuff that you're saying, but also that takes us to another question, which is, because a lot of people think, don't they, oh, well, I don't need to work with a sports nutritionist because I've already got a personal trainer and they're giving me some nutritional advice. However, and there are, you know, to be fair, this is not knocking PTs, because some of them are fantastic and they're really switched on and really up to date, and they're, you know, really going to town on educating themselves on the kinds of things that we do. But then not everybody's like that. So this is another reason, isn't it, Olivia, why really people do need to come to someone who's properly trained.
Oh, absolutely. Because in my experience now, because I've been doing this nearly for 20 years, I've seen it all. I've seen dangerous personal teacher or personal trainers who were giving advice where even for me, it's like, if I am somebody, I would say, oh, no, I don't think what you're saying is correct. You know, I will actually question them. And I actually questioned many personal trainers over the years, because I was like, you know, what you're saying is actually very difficult to accept, especially that when you are a personal trainer, you have that kind of training, and then you use that training to obviously use it in your everyday work, and like anybody else does. But however, and I've seen it countless time, they will give the same plan, which is, for me, I think it's the same for the last 20 years. They give the same plan to a young teenager who wants to improve their trainings and really develop their muscle mass, and maybe they want to, you know, do it for maintenance, but also because they want to increase their kind of body mass and all the rest of it. And then you have the middle-aged man or the middle-aged woman. And then you have those who are like my busy CEO, who have really stressful job. And if you look down to the papers, they all have the same plans to follow. And that is to exercise more, to eat more protein, up the carbs, and avoid fats. And I'm like, but you can't say that to everyone, because it doesn't work that way. And what I also realized is that when I was doing my nutrition training, and they were very adamant, if your personal trainers are not trained in nutrition, it's actually against the law for them to give nutritional advice. By law, they are not allowed to give nutritional advice. So that's why when you have a personal trainer, always have a sport nutritionist by your side, because that, at least you will have the correct information to deal with. And yes, I've met fantastic personal trainers over the years. Some really were pushing themselves to know better and really give the right advice. And some of them actually consulted with me to make sure that they were actually doing better jobs. And I was like, well, if you really want to have that nutrition, then train in nutrition. You can do it in short courses and then, like part-time courses or what have you. It might take 1 year or two, but at least you will have that under your belt. Yes. So that will give you an edge over the others. So I think for me, when it comes to personal trainers, yes, absolutely. If you need that for support, to push you to reach your best, then absolutely. But their advice is always to be taken with a pinch of salt. And if you don't know about what they are saying, and if you want to question them, always do your research as well. So that if you start feeling that you're reaching a plateau or your health is not working well, then do your research and question them. And maybe it's time that I see a sport nutritionist.
I know. And I think if they're still in that old paradigm of exercise more and eat less, yes, you need alarm bells need to be ringing, because that's just not going to optimize performance. And I remember a young girl just started uni and she was studying sport, really, really keen athlete, and she hadn't had a period for a year and a half, and discovered with the consultation that her GP just wanted to do the usual and put her on the pill, which is certainly not going to sort out the problem, because quickly looking at her story and her diet, she had a phobia about fat. There was next to no fat in the diet. And of course, her sport was very, very demanding. She needed that fat. But I explained to her about how the hormones work and how our hormones are made from cholesterol. So we must have healthy fat, good fats in the diet to manufacture those hormones. And when I encouraged her to eat good fats, and we talked through what they looked like, and to stop counting calories, that was banned. That word wasn't allowed in her language. Then we then got her periods coming back within a few months, and she did fantastically well. But it's another example of, when you think of some of the common things. A lot of people think, oh, I don't need to go to a sports nutritionist or a nutritionist of any kind. I'll just do it myself. I'll read a book. I'll read some magazine. It'll tell me what to do. But what are some of the common things that people get wrong when making nutritional changes?
Again, yes.
Big question.
Yeah. The issue is that they might actually work against their body. And that's the biggest issue. Because the problem is that if they want to increase their regimen, which is fine, and that they want to build the muscles or just for maintenance, again, it will not be the same as if you want to take it up, like exercising 2 hours a day, because you want to make it to the kind of a sport universe. So now the demands on the body is not really the same. And again, what I see is that if you follow the advice of your personal trainer or the advice that you read online and all the rest of it, then you know that fat should be banned from the diet. And that for me is really a huge problem, because like you said, you know already that hormones will be a big problem, because that will lead to an imbalance. But the thing is that what people don't understand is that if you do not have fat in your body will produce that fat, and that body will produce the cholesterol that you need. And I think from just remembering, I think it's about 800 milligrams of cholesterol that your body will produce if you don't bring cholesterol from your diet. So it doesn't matter if you eat fat or not, your body will make those fats. However, the issue as well is that we know that all our cells membrane, including our nerve cells, are all fat components to make their membrane. So if you don't actually eat good fat, you will have very big difficulties having your cells transferring the metabolic waste and the carbon dioxide and then the oxygen to go in, because you will know we need oxygen to reach the mitochondria to actually produce ATP, and ATP is the energy currency of the body. So if you have those kind of solid, less malleable cells membrane, then we know that the oxygen will have more difficulties to go in, and the metabolic waste and the carbon dioxide to be trapped inside the cells. So now we know that with that good fat, your performance will be affected.
Mm-hmm.
But just looking at the cells themselves. But the thing is as well, when you look at the cells, we need to remember that fats belong to the macronutrients.
Mm-hmm.
So fats are fuels for the body. So why would you want to kind of say yes to one type of macronutrients, maybe let's say the carbs or the protein, and let's say have others, when we know that they have a function in the body as well? So for me, it's like, why is that you are focusing on those particular one and not on the fat? So, and again, for me, it's all about being conditioned by the media, by decades of biased literature, who were just saying that fat is the bad guy. And again, yes, we can also talk about sugar and carbs, but we know that obviously when you're an athlete, you need to have an availability of more carbs because you have more demands on the body, and the body needs sugar to kind of use as fuel.
Mm-hmm.
And also when you do your performance, it's not only your muscle tissue that you are feeding, you're also feeding your brain. So because obviously your brain is kind of directing all your body movements, your thoughts, your ability to go further. And all of this is orchestrated by the brain. So the brain relies a lot on energy as well. So when you look at your different kind of sports, then yes, you need to have a different ratio of macronutrients, but you need to have all of them, the three main macronutrients in your diet and your daily diet. You need to consume those healthy fats. You need to have those good carbs, and you need those lean protein in your diet. But you also need to focus on the plant-based protein and not only the animal one, because you need that kind of different selection of foods, because what you don't want is to have those kind of directing your diet into one direction where you only focus on maybe like eggs or steaks every day, things like this, because this will lead to inflammation on the long term, especially if you focus on the very hard and difficult protein to digest. So if you go for the plant-based, it's also at least a bit easier for the body to digest and assimilate. Because it's important to understand that whatever protein you are consuming, the body needs to break them down to shorter chain of amino acids and amino acids themselves, so that they can be taken up by the gut cells. So it means that whatever protein will need to be broken down for the body to actually kind of rebuild those protein on the other sides. So it doesn't matter in a way what kind of protein you are consuming in itself, because it will need to be broken down. However, you want to avoid those that are irritating and very difficult to digest.
Mm-hmm. And this is where it all gets so interesting and so complicated for people.
Oh, yes.
And it is a minefield, and you can easily see where people just get it wrong and give up. But then you've got people out there as well who think, oh, well, it doesn't matter what I eat, because that's why I exercise, because then I can eat what I want. Or if I exercise, I'm fine. But it doesn't work that way. And even cardiologist Asim Malhotra, he posts a lot on the fact that you cannot exercise yourself out of a bad diet. It doesn't work that way. And as you mentioned earlier on in the discussion, inflammation is inflammation. And it doesn't matter whether you're a thin person with inflammation or a slightly bigger person with inflammation, it's still there. And that is going to be, directed by the foods we eat, or stress, or sleep, toxin exposure, all the things in our environment, which influence our gene expression moment by moment, day by day. So there's all of these complex things that are just so fascinating that we'd be here all day going into. We really would. And then there's the fact that if you do over-exercise, then you can cause free radical damage. And that's when we need, and I find a lot of people who have been into sport, who have come to me over the years for various reasons to do their health, they have not been topping up their antioxidants. They haven't been aware of the fact that if you're going to do that level of exercise, you really need to take seriously your antioxidants. And this becomes even more relevant when we're thinking about fertility later on for ladies and men, because we need those antioxidants for egg health and sperm health. But I do notice in practice it becomes a particular problem for men and male fertility. Is that something that you would notice?
Absolutely. So going back to the busy CEO, the actual reason that he came to see me was because he had difficulties conceiving. So they've been trying and it never worked. So that's why they took me on board to actually say, okay, because you have all of these things, can you actually make us understand why we can't conceive? Because even the doctor says nothing wrong. But again, they always check the woman and never the man. And when they do, they don't really find anything wrong, to be honest. And what was happening is that because it was just so stressed and everything that was actually impeding on his performance was also the issue there, making them more difficult to conceive. So when you look at, again, the good fat, you also need to look at the bad fat. And my understanding was that for him, good dinner will be a pizza, takeaway pizza. So now for me, I was like, that's very interesting. But it's like, yeah, but I exercise every day. And I was like, yes, but the problem is now, if you are giving junk to your body and you expect yourself to function optimally, it won't work that way. And especially if you really look at the trans fat itself, or the fat from meat and those highly saturated fats. Now, when you understand that their function in the body is categorically different from all other type of essential fatty acids, then you start to understand why. Because again, if we look at the cell's membrane, we know that the body can only use what we give it. So if we give it bad fat, the body will use bad fat to make cell's membrane. But we know that trans fat and saturated fat make really rigid cell membranes, who do not really kind of let those gases pass through like they should, like the oxygen, the carbon dioxide. And we know that this cannot be restricted in any way, because we know that that will lead to metabolic waste accumulation in the cells, that will lead to extra free radical damage. And then on the other side, the oxygen cannot reach. So your performance will not be optimal. So when you look at that, and you really understand how it can be a real problem, is that I remember, I think one summit, they said that trans fat or bad saturated fat can remain in the body for 51 days. So it means it will take 51 days for your cell's membrane to be replaced with good fat. But if you still continue to eat bad fats, then the problem will carry on. You will never kind of, especially if you go for those fried foods, you know, especially those fried food from food outlets or restaurants, which we know are, you know, just as bad as petrol that you put in your car. So it's very, very difficult to maintain your exercise regime if you can't eat a proper diet and really focus on the good fat. So that for me, yes, definitely. Because again, if you don't really focus on the good fat, you will have problems with your hormones. Absolutely. And if you have problem with your hormones, then you will have problem conceiving. But the problem with men, yes, you talk about the antioxidants, that will have an effect on the sperm quality, but you also need to focus on the zinc, you also need to focus on the nutrient-dense diet. But for me, what I kind of seen in practice and see from research is that we also need to be very mindful about the antioxidants. Because when you are looking at elite athletes, for example, those who are into the strength training, they actually recommended to not go too much towards the antioxidants, because what's happening is that the antioxidant helps with free radical damage. Therefore, they prevent healing and process and repair processes, or they actually promote healing and repair processes faster than they should. Therefore, you don't develop muscle mass. So what you need, especially when you are looking to increase your body mass, then you need to let that breakdown happen so that the body can build those tissue as to repair. So that's what happens. You break down your tissue and then you grow bigger tissue. That's how you build your muscles. But if you're taking too many antioxidants, then that will impede on the actual putting on weight, if that makes sense, or that body mass. So that's why for me, it's like, again, when it comes to sport nutrition, it's never straightforward. You always have to get all the factors.
Yeah, it totally is. But onto a slightly more a straightforward topic to finish up on is hydration, because people would think, oh, that's an easy one. I'm definitely drinking enough. I'm absolutely fine. But actually, dehydration is a little bit more of a problem than people might think, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, because dehydration is actually a big issue, because depending on your type of exercise, you still need to be hydrated all throughout your exercise. And that it could be like, the cyclist in the Tour de France, for example. They probably cycle for, I don't know, 8-10 hours a day, and they do like 300 kilometers or more, or even less. So you need to be hydrated the whole time. And you need to supply those electrolytes, because you're sweating, you're losing a lot of this, especially in those type of exercise. And then you have the team players, or you have the strength training. And what is actually very important to the hydration is actually for those long hours of exercise, so those endurance exercise. So when you're looking at that, is that when you know your VO2 max, which is literally the level of oxygen, the maximum level of oxygen when you exercise, then when you have that as a basis, it's fine. But the problem, if you are dehydrated, then your VO2 max will lower, and you will not have the same output, and your performance will be affected. So actually, hydration is actually vital when you're doing those type of exercise, those type of require endurance from you. And what research has shown is that if you do use electrolyte, especially sodium, that will help maintain your hydration, because we know that sodium is contraindicated for people with cardiovascular disease and high blood pressure, because you want to reduce that blood pressure. But in exercising, it's the opposite. You want to have that higher blood pressure, because you need those nutrients to go and be diverted to all the tissue that are being used for energy. You need all those nutrients, you need all that glucose to be channeled, and channeled very fast. So that's why the blood pressure needs to be kind of a bit higher than usual. And for example, that we know that electrolytes can help reduce heart rate. And so much so they can be from 9 to 10 beats per minute. So it's quite considerable, considering how oxygen is an issue for competing athletes, for example. But also sodium help you to kind of lower the rise in body temperature, because obviously your body is heating up, you are exercising. But with sodium, because you have more liquid being channeled, the heat can be dispersed a lot quicker, and you're sweating more. And that's what you want, because when you sweat, you regulate your temperature. But it also kind of reduced your perceived exhaustion. So it can actually help you to kind of feel less tired after exercise. And that is because you have enough oxygen in your blood to supply to the tissue. And the thing is, it kind of help you press your electrolyte as well, because we know that electrolytes are extremely vital for your body, because you need to maintain that kind of liquid in your blood. You need your blood to be very liquid. You don't want it to be thick in any way, because again, if it's kind of thick, then the oxygen won't be so easily transferred to the muscles tissue. So that's why for me, it's like, if you are dehydrated, then your performance will be really kind of affected. And therefore you really need to top up your sodium, especially in athletes. I'm not talking about people who exercise just a few minutes a day, so 30 minutes or 1 hour. I'm talking about those who exercise a lot more, and that is their full-time job. Their requirements, which usually is about 2.3 grams to 2 grams, you can actually go much higher for this, because especially for those who are cyclists in the Tour de France, for example, they need a lot of electrolyte, because they need to maintain their hydration, because they're sweating a lot and they're losing a lot via the skin. So they really need to top them like all the time, and so regularly.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that was a very, very detailed answer to a topic that a lot of people think, oh, that's just easy, that's the easy, but I can hydrate, I can get that bit right. But actually, can you? I mean, it just shows in that fascinating answer that you gave there, so much detail, how complex all of this is. And sports nutrition, obviously, to work with someone like Olivier, he can work with you if you're a professional class, if you're just a serious triathlete, or if you or someone who is starting out in these things, because obviously as nutritional therapists with a nutritional therapy hat on, we work at the softer level as well. So it really doesn't matter what your story is or where you're at, then Olivier would be able to work with you. But for those of you who do want to take things a bit more seriously, then I'm sure in what you've heard today, you will be convinced that he is the man to work with. He has the knowledge, the passion, the understanding, and the experience to be able to help you optimize not only your performance, but also crucially your health and your mental health as well. Because as you said earlier, we can so easily, any of us, get into adrenal fatigue when we overdo things. So it's that self-care. And even if you're not kind to yourself, we will make sure that we are kind to you, and that we encourage you to get on the right track, managing all aspects of your health. So thank you, Olivier, for such a fascinating discussion. I'm sure that's been very, very insightful and stimulating to so many people listening today. And we look forward to picking up on some of these topics in the future, maybe even the fertility one. Actually, I was thinking there would be an interesting one to get into, especially with this kind of sports angle. So thank you again, and hope that our listeners have enjoyed it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Nourishing Insights podcast. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram and YouTube. If you're interested in learning more about natural health, then why not come and join us in the Nourishing Insights membership. There you'll find a community of like-minded people to support you on your journey. Each month we release a class on a new topic, and we have a live Q&A where you can ask us any questions. Doors are open until the end of April, and you'll find all of the information you need in the caption. We look forward to seeing you next time, and in the meantime, stay nourished and let food be your medicine.